how do you know if you are living your life's purpose? How are you supposed to understand if you're in alignment, living your purpose or not? And I want to talk about this because I think there's probably symptoms to not living your purpose, and there are probably symptoms to actually living your purpose. And one thing is for sure, I don't see the majority of us living our purpose because there are so many symptoms and so many statistics leading and pointing to the fact that the majority of us are not doing that. And I want to talk about what does it look like for when you are living your purpose and what does it look like for when you are not living your purpose. And I'm going to start with the nots. And I want to start there because I think those are a lot more obvious and we all probably have felt them a time or two. And I just want to caveat this conversation by saying that there are clearly outside reasons at times where we will feel these things, that just because I claim a symptom for not fulfilling your purpose or not living your purpose does not mean that it's the only thing that's going on. And I want to say that caveat because, life is tough. There's a lot that happens in life. Our loved ones get sick, our loved ones die, our kids are having a tough time in school, we lose our job. So there's all sorts of things that can lead to us having these symptoms I'm about to talk about of how do you know when you're not living your purpose. But I want to think about these symptoms in the realm of, generally speaking, your life is okay, right? Generally speaking, your family's healthy. Generally speaking, your kids are doing okay in school. Generally speaking, you have a job. You haven't just gotten fired. There's nothing like majorly tragic that is going on. And I want to make sure that we clarify that point because, again, there are going to be times in your life when major things happen, major life changes, major life events, and these symptoms will come up, and it doesn't have anything to do with your purpose. It's just life. And so let's start by talking about what symptoms appear when you are not living your life's purpose. And I'll start by telling you a story for myself. And in my I would say late 20s, early 30s, if it had the word purpose in the title, whether it was a book, a podcast, a course, a speaker, anything, if it had find your purpose in the title, I was on it. And I really, 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 really wanted to find my purpose. And I would go to the ends of the earth to do that. And I kept coming up short. And the fact of the matter is, and the reality is, there were probably things that showed up along the way that I just ignored. Or I would start doing and then give up because I didn't have any outside affirmation around it. One of the biggest things that falls in this bucket is writing. I enjoy writing. It's hard for me, as it is for most writers, but I love it. I love writing. I love expressing my thoughts through writing. My soul gets so happy when I write, and it's good for my brain too. My mind likes it because it's a challenge to get it right, to edit it, and it's a whole process, writing. And so I remember years ago, I started a WordPress blog site. I'm like, okay, I'm going to write. I know that I'm going to write. And I started this site, and I think I may have wrote I don't even know if I wrote a blog, to be honest with you. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not even sure, or I remember even writing one blog. But I could hear my soul's desires in wanting to write. And so I took the action, but I freaked out, and then I pulled the plug and I didn't do it. And I tell you this story because when we are on the hunt for our purpose and things get put in front of us and we ignore it, over and over and over again, we end up having symptoms that are so painful and so hard to ignore that sometimes, a lot of times, we end up having a dark soul of the night. We end up having rock bottom. There are things that happen where we no longer can ignore it. And that's what ended up happening to me. I was so keen on finding my purpose. And then once something would present itself to me, like wanting to be an author or write, I would semi-attempt it and then I would give it up. And so I did that over and over and over again. I mean, if I remove myself from myself and I look at myself from a like higher level and a kind of a third person, like an outside person, I would be looking at me being like, what in the heck are you doing? What is wrong with you, man? Like you're on this search, on this hunt, on this quest to find your purpose, and things pop up and then you don't even do anything about it. I would probably like shake myself. And so as I went through the years doing that same situation on various avenues, various topics, various things, from as big as starting my own company to as small as wanting to volunteer at a horse farm. It's like the whole thing, the whole spectrum of stuff. When I was on the hunt to find my purpose, I would consistently see it, know it, feel it, take minimal action, not have all the affirmations in the world that I did something great and wonderful, and then I would give up. And I did this over and over and over again. And so what ended up happening, and this is where I can talk about now, when you are not living your purpose, there will be signs, there will be symptoms. And for me, it was a slow burn on anxiety. So when I would be driving, I'd get really hot. I'd have to roll down the window. My palms would start sweating. And it was like my mind was just making something up in the moment. And I had no idea what it was doing. I had no idea what was going on. But the symptom was anxiety. And again, I'll just remind everybody, I do not think anxiety is only because you're not living your purpose. There are various reasons. But that to me is one of the signs and one of the symptoms of not living your purpose because I was experiencing it. I know some people who, when they're not living their purpose and they're not honoring themselves, they get burnt out. They feel exhausted. When I've talked to people about this before, they'll say, oh my gosh, I'm just exhausted, or I was exhausted before they found their purpose, before they started honoring themselves. And so exhaustion can be a symptom of not honoring yourself and not fulfilling your soul's desires, aka not living your purpose. So as a reminder, my definition of finding your purpose or having purpose in life is fulfilling your soul's desires. And when you're not doing that, you can feel anxious, you can feel exhausted, you can feel burnt out. And a lot of the times when we do these things, it's like we know something's wrong, and ironically, we end up trying harder. I was just talking to someone the other day and she said, I felt bad because I thought I was doing the right thing by having this good job and helping my family and taking care of my kids and everything. But my kid brought a picture home where she drew a picture of me, and the exercise in school was, my mom likes fill in the blank. My mom's hobby is fill in the blank. And the child, and there was probably like 5 or 6 fill in the blanks. And every single one of them was, my mom likes to work. My mom's hobby is work. My mom works all the time. And she was like, oh no. So she thought she was doing the right thing. And so instead of saying, okay, I need to rework what I'm doing here, she actually was harder on herself and said, I just need to work harder at being a mom, and I have to work harder at being a careerist. So she's like, I need to get up earlier, get my work done so then I can spend time with my child. And so her symptoms were exhaustion. She was starting to fail and feel sick. And I think we all definitely experience that. We will start feeling sickness. and start feeling exhaustion and anxiety, sometimes depression. And again, I know these are not the only reasons we have those symptoms, but I do know that symptoms of not fulfilling your soul's desires, not having purpose in your life, not feeling fulfilled, some of the symptoms will turn up as anxiety, depression, frustration, exhaustion, and disease, and various other things. You might even find yourself having a symptom of difficult relationships. Maybe your partnership, marriage, friendships are failing or suffering, because what ends up happening is if you're not fulfilling your soul's desires and you're having those other symptoms like frustration, exhaustion, burnout, etc., disease, then it's hard to have healthy relationships around you as well, because you don't have anything else to give. There's nothing else for you to give. So those are symptoms of not fulfilling your purpose, not fulfilling your soul's desires. Symptoms of fulfilling your soul's desires and having purpose in your life are happiness, peacefulness. You have energy. I have more energy now than I've ever had in my entire life. I'm the least stressed out I have ever been in my life. And if I had just known back in my late 20s and early 30s when I was searching and searching and searching for my purpose, if I had just known that it is simply to take a second, go inward, understand what my soul desires, and express it accordingly, I would have saved myself a lot of stress and headache. And I will say, and I always say this because people always tell me, yeah, but you learned so much along the way. I did. And I wouldn't necessarily exchange it for anything. But if I had known that back then, if I had known that just the simple act of doing something I truly desire to do is my purpose, it would have been so much easier for myself. I would have put so much less pressure on myself. You know, one of the biggest problems with trying to search for purpose is we put so much pressure on ourselves. We get it in our head that it has to be one thing and one thing only, and it has to be the perfect thing, and it has to feel good all the time. And we just put it on a pedestal, really. Like we put purpose on a pedestal. Yeah, we put purpose on a pedestal. And then when we can't find it, or God forbid, we actually do find it, we feel like there's things that our soul desires and we're like, okay, I get it. Like I did with writing. And then we don't follow through. It's almost like throwing salt on a wound. You know, it's almost like, wait a minute, I'm confused. Your soul's talking to you now. Wait a minute, I'm confused. You wanted to find something that you think is purposeful, that you think is your purpose in life, and I'm showing you exactly what it is, and then you're not following through and fulfilling it, it almost makes it worse than if you're just not even looking for it. For me, when I was searching and searching and searching, and then something would come up and I wouldn't fulfill it, I really truly believe it made it worse, made it way worse. So symptoms of you are fulfilling your soul's desires are happiness, peacefulness, you feel settled, you don't have a lot of angst, your anxiety subsides. I'll be really honest, you guys, like I was on anxiety drugs twice in my life. And the second time I went on them, I was so maxed out. I mean, I was working 60 plus hours a week, trying to prove something. I don't even know what, certainly not listening to a darn thing my soul was saying. I mean, my soul was asking for more rest. My soul was asking for creative outlets like writing. My soul was asking for deeper connections. I wasn't even spending time with my friends to have deeper connections because I didn't have time. I couldn't see my family most of the time because I was working so much. And this is not at all what my soul wanted. And I'm not saying, by the way, if you are a person who's a hard-charged person who wants to be an executive, you want to run a company someday, I see nothing wrong with that. But personally, it was not for me. And my soul was screaming as loud as she possibly could with the anxiety. It got louder and louder and louder until I decided to go on medication so I could just function in life. And even then, right, like I just ignored her because I helped her out by getting her medicine and making her feel better. But ultimately, I wasn't solving anything because I was still not listening. I was just keeping going. And so it's really important to understand these different symptoms that we see and that we feel when we are fulfilling our soul's desires and when we are not fulfilling our soul's desires. And it's really important to understand and see the difference, because it's really not that hard, and we're making it so difficult because we're thinking we have to find something, and when we can't find it, we just either give up looking, or we get frustrated, and then we just keep doing the thing we know how to do, which is work, or keep doing a job because it pays the bills. And that's just the road we keep walking down. And then we pick our heads up and we're like, God, I'm exhausted. I'm unhappy. I don't feel at peace. And now I feel guilty for feeling all those things because I have everything I should ever want. I should feel grateful. You know how many times I've heard that? I should feel grateful for my family, for my good job. I have a house. I have food on the table. Okay, great. Those things are wonderful and beautiful. And I agree. You should feel grateful for that. But that shouldn't stop you from fulfilling your soul's desires. There's no reason that needs to stop you from fulfilling your soul's desires. And I often, if you go back and watch any of my other videos, I often reference starting very small in the realm of fulfilling your soul's desires, like something super simple, like taking a 20-minute walk a day outside because you enjoy so much being in the sun and being outside, or scheduling a dinner with a friend because you desire connection so much, or spending time with your kids on the playground after school instead of feeling like you have to do the right thing and get their homework done. Right? So, right, you should feel grateful, but there's no reason for the good things in life to get in the way of fulfilling your soul's desires. You can have both. You can have both. You can be really grateful for those things, and you can fulfill your soul's desires. So I think a lot of people end up in this space of feeling like they cannot do anything different than what they're already doing because they should feel grateful for what they have, and therefore having anything else makes them feel bad and guilty. And that's not true. That is so not true. You can have a good family, you can have a nice house, you can have a decent job, and still pursue your purpose, still pursue fulfilling your soul's desires. There's nothing wrong with having both. In fact, I highly encourage it. But just because you want to feel differently about your life doesn't mean you're not grateful for those things, really. We're just almost using that to some degree as an excuse to not do the kind of scary thing, which is reach inside and figure out what it is we truly want and do the hard work of discovering who we really are as a person. And instead we blame things like, well, I need to take care of my family. I should have a good job. I should feel grateful for what I already have. I should feel grateful for what I already have. So therefore, I'm just not going to try to have anything more in life. But that's not what life's about. We are in a place where we can have abundance as much as we want. And our desires are our destiny. And there's nothing wrong with them. And the more we villainize them, the more we feel guilty and shameful, and the more we feel like we should just be grateful for what we have, the more we set aside what our soul wants, and the more we're going down this road of potentially getting into the danger zone like I did, where I had so much anxiety, I had panic attacks, I couldn't drive, I was in a bad place. And I just know, at the time I didn't, but now I know that it was my soul literally screaming at the top of her lungs, please listen to me. And I didn't. I just kept on pushing through because I thought I was supposed to. I thought that the job I had was the job I was supposed to have. I thought that it was responsible of me to keep going and not push the pause button. So I just kept going and just kept going. And then it just got to the point where I couldn't keep going anymore. I was forced to shut it down. I literally could not drive. I couldn't get in my car and go a quarter mile down the road without panicking. And I share that, and I tell that story because it's so important for us to understand the symptoms that can be popping up on us for when we're not fulfilling our soul's desires.